Can you make matcha in a blender? This is something we wanted to test out, and today we will be doing a quick tea experiment. Just to give you some context, we often put out videos explaining that the bamboo whisk, or Chasen, is the best tool to use when whisking a bowl of matcha tea. We appreciate all the people that have offered suggestions of how to make matcha without the bamboo whisk, and one of the more common suggestions was to just use a blender. When it comes to preparing matcha, the most important thing to do is to make sure you get this nice foam on top of the tea. This will give it a smoother texture and taste. To put this to the test, we took out the Asamiya Sayama Midori matcha and put a spoonful or two into the blender. We then added about 200 milliliters of water and started to blend it. At first, I would have thought that the blender would create too much foam, but actually it created a very manageable amount. I poured the matcha into the bowl and took a look at the texture of the tea first. As you can see, the foam is pretty thick, but there is some room for improvement. When I went to take a sip of the drink, the flavor was quite smooth, but I did notice some clumps in the matcha, which means it wasn't mixed properly. This really surprised me because I actually blended the drink quite well and even alternated blending to give the clumps a chance to settle to the bottom and then be blended by the blades. This is a trick I use to blend my morning smoothies, and it works just fine on frozen fruit, so I'm surprised it didn't work well on the matcha. This just further proves how important it is to not only sift your matcha, but also make it in a smaller quantity so you can notice any clumps that begin to form. If I were whisking this matcha myself, I would begin by sifting the matcha into a bowl and then starting out with a tiny bit of water so I could blend the powder into a paste. This gives me an extra layer of security and ensures that there are no clumps when I add the rest of the water in. I can then whisk it up with the chasen to create this beautiful foam in just a matter of seconds. The foam created here is much thicker, even though it was made by hand versus a machine. The advantage of a blender is that it does work better with cold matcha, so if you're making an iced matcha latte, you should definitely use a blender. You can then also take some oat milk and add it to the blender afterwards, or just shake it to mix it up. This is something I'm hesitant to do with the whisk because I don't want to get the bamboo whisk dirty with anything that isn't water or matcha. Adding oat milk to the matcha is fine if you enjoy the flavor, but I found that it took away a lot of the intensity I enjoy in a matcha. The Asamiya matcha is much smoother, so it's best to drink it plain, but if you want to create a matcha latte, we suggest you go for a stronger matcha like the matcha kaki tsubata, or just go for a latte matcha, which is meant to be mixed with milk. So in conclusion, if you don't have a whisk at home, the blender is a sufficient way to blend your matcha as long as it's nice and clean. If you really want to level up your matcha game, we suggest that you get a bamboo whisk so you can begin to practice your matcha preparation and start experimenting with tea yourself. If you are a fan of matcha lattes or making cold matcha, I would definitely recommend using the blender as it can make things a lot easier. Did you like this tea experiment? If you want to see us do more tea experiments in the future, please subscribe for more videos. If you want to try the matcha that we used in the video for yourself, or if you want to try the matcha specifically designed to make great matcha lattes, please check for the links in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.